Welcome to everybody's third time. How are you doing today? We are going to be reading a story. But first up, we are going to be reading the Bible.
What book are we in the Bible?
We are in...
Wow.
Esther. Then we're going to be doing the synopsis with Kimberly. But before we do the synopsis with Kimberly, she is going to be showing us her artwork.
Huh? Never mind.
The pot.
Darn it. Oh, the pot.
She doesn't want to show anybody her pot.
And then after we do the show and tell thing with pictures, we are going to be doing the synopsis with Kimberly. Then we are going to be doing The Princess Bride. I think we can finish this book on Sunday.
I think we're going to finish it the time after today. Whether it's tomorrow or probably not Saturday, but either tomorrow or Sunday.
And it is now time for the Bible with my dad. So,
You just need to put some more detail in it with the darker blue. You can use different,
Alonzi.
Are we good? Everybody's talking off camera. Hi. How are we doing? All right, so we're on Esther Chapter 9. I'm going to read about half of it because Chapter 10 is very short. And we're going to read Chapter 10 during our next live stream. So, this is Esther Chapter 9. This is the English Standard Version of the Bible. Now, in the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's command and edict were about to be carried out on that very day, when the enemies of the Jews hoped to gain the mastery over them, the reverse occurred. The Jews gained mastery over those who hated them. The Jews gathered in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus to lay hands on those who sought their harm, and no one could stand against them, for the fear of them had fallen on all peoples. All the officials of the provinces and the satraps and the governors and the royal agents also helped the Jews, for the fear of Mordecai had fallen on them. For Mordecai was great in that king's house, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces, for the man Mordecai grew more and more powerful. The Jews struck all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and did as they pleased to those who hated them. In Susa, the citadel itself, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men, and also King Parshandatha, and Dalphon, and Asphatha, and Poratha, and Adalia, and Aridatha, and Parmashtha, and Arisai, and Aridai, and Vizatha. All of those people. Then the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, but they laid no hand on the plunder. That very day, the number of those killed in Susa, the citadel, was reported to the king, and the king said to Queen Esther, "In Susa, the citadel, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men, and also the 10 sons of Haman. What then have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is your wish? It shall be granted you, and what further is your request? It shall be fulfilled." And Esther said, "If it please the king, let the Jews who are in Susa be allowed tomorrow also to do according to this day's edict, and let the 10 sons of Haman be hanged on the gallows." So the king commanded this to be done. A decree was issued in Susa, and the 10 sons of Haman were hanged. The Jews who were in Susa gathered also on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and they killed 300 men in Susa. But they laid no hands on the plunder. Now the rest of the Jews who were in the king's provinces also gathered to defend their lives, and got relief from their enemies, and killed 75,000 of those who hated them. But they laid no hands on the plunder. This was on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day they rested, and made that a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews who were in Susa gathered on the 13th day, and on the 14th, and rested on the 15th day, making that a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the villages who live in the rural towns hold the 14th day of the month of Adar as a day for gladness and feasting, as a holiday, and as a day on which they send gifts of food to one another. That is where I'm going to stop in the middle of chapter 9, and we will finish chapter 9 and read chapter 10, which is only like about 5 verses, I think. That's not Esther. And read chapter 10, which is actually only 3 verses. So that's the reason why I'm not reading chapter 10 by itself. And here is the one, the only Kimberly.
So I did this. And in the last chapter, Buttercup found out that Prince Humperdinck, he wasn't sending the ships over to see if they could get her letter to Wesley. And then Prince Humperdinck, when she called him a coward, went and killed Wesley. And then after...
Killed him dead.
Yeah, killed him dead. And then after that, the Spaniard, Inigo, and the other guy, the Turk, they were trying to find Wesley because they're like, okay, so we found out where the guy who killed Inigo's dad was, so they're going over to take him out. And then they're like, oh, but we need, what's his name? I've already forgotten.
Wesley?
No. Before that, yeah, Vicini. And Vicini's dead, so...
What?
So they go over to... They're trying to find Wesley, or the Man in Black, because he was able to outsmart Vicini. So he must be smarter than he was, and he was pretty smart. So he should be able to help them get through the castle, so that Inigo can attack the six-fingered man.
Who's the six-fingered man?
I forget.
Alright, you're fired.
You said that last time.
Okay.
And look at her now.
And look at her now, getting up. Alright, so, the six-fingered man is Count Rugen! Yay.
It's a very forgettable name. Everyone else is really cool names.
Yeah, but if you've seen the movie 100 times like I have, then
Oh,
you
but
know
we haven't.
all of the names. So, alright, so we're on chapter 7, the wedding. And who remembers what the first word is?
Wesley.
Nope.
Inigo.
Inigo! Very good, Daniel. Alright.
I was gonna say
I'm just guessing, I'm
yes.
not joking.
Okay, this chapter is just checking to see if I think we can finish it, but it's going to be Dude, that's a lot of pages. All right, we'll see. All right, we might read most of it because I think chapter 8's pretty short. So we'll read most of it and then finish it and then read chapter 8 tomorrow. All right, or whenever the next time that we read is. All right. This is, once again, chapter 7, the wedding. Finally, we had all the festivities. We had all the introductions and the festivities and the whatever.
All the festivities were canceled. All the dreams.
But they had lots of festivities. And now we finally get to the actual wedding ceremony itself. All right, Inigo allowed Fezzik to open the door, not because he wished to hide behind the giant's strength, but rather because the giant's strength was crucial to their entering. Someone would have to force the thick door from its hinges, and it was right up Fezzik's alley. "It's open," Fezzik said, simply turning the knob, peering inside. "Open?" Inigo hesitated. "Close it, then. There must be something wrong. Why would something as valuable as the prince's private zoo be left unlocked?" "It smells of animals, something awful in there," Fezzik said. "Did I get a whiff?" "Let me think," Inigo said. "I'll figure it out." And he tried to do his best. But it made no sense. You didn't leave diamonds lying around on the breakfast table, and you kept the zoo of death shut and bolted. So there had to be a reason. It was just a matter of exercising your brain power, and the answer would be there. The answer to why the door happened to be unlocked was really this: it was always unlocked. And the reason for that was really this: safety. No one who had entered via the front door had ever survived to exit again. The idea basically belonged to Count Rugen, who helped the prince architect the place. The prince selected the location, the farthest corner of the castle grounds, away from everything so the roars wouldn't bother the servants. But the count designed the entrance. The real entrance was by a giant tree, where a root lifted and revealed a staircase, and down you went until you arrived at the 5th level. The false entrance, called the real entrance, took you down the levels the ordinary way, first to the second to third, or, actually, second to death. "Yes," Inigo said finally. "You figured it out. The reason the door was unlocked is simply this. The albino would have locked it. He would never have been so stupid as not to, but, Fezzik, my friend, we got to him before he got to it. Clearly, once he was done with his wheelbarrowing, he would have begun locking and bolting. It's quite all right. You can stop worrying. Let's go." "I just feel so safe with you," Fezzik said, and he pulled the door open a second time. As he did it, he noticed that not only was the door unlocked, it didn't even have a place for a lock, and he wondered should he mention that to Inigo, but decided against it, because Inigo would have to wait and figure some more, and they had done enough of that already, because although he said he felt safe with Inigo, in truth he was very frightened. He had heard odd things about this place, and lions didn't bother him, and who cared about gorillas? They were nothing. It was the creepers that made him squeamish, and the slitherers, and the stingers, and the everything. Fezzik decided to be truthful and honest. Spiders and snakes and bugs and bats and you name it. He just wasn't very fond of any of them. "Still smells of animals," he said, and he held the door open for Inigo, and together, stride for stride, they entered the Zoo of Death, the great door shutting silently behind them. "Quite a bizarre place," Inigo said, moving past several large cages, in which were cheetahs and hummingbirds and other swift things. At the end of the hall was another door with a sign above it saying, "To Level 2. They opened that door and saw a flight of stairs leading very steeply down. "Careful," Inigo said. "Stay close to me and watch your balance." They started down toward the 2nd level. "If I tell you something, will you promise not to laugh at me or mock me or be mean to me?" Fezzik said. "My word," Inigo nodded. "I'm just scared to pieces," Fezzik said. "Be sure it ceases," Inigo said right back. "Oh, that's a wonderful rhyme. Some other time," Inigo said, making another, feeling quite bright about the whole thing, sensing the pleasure in having Fezzik visibly relax as they descended. So he smiled and clapped Fezzik on his great shoulder, and for the good fellow he was. But deep, deep inside, Inigo's stomach was knotting. He was absolutely appalled and astonished that a man of unlimited strength and power would be scared to pieces. Until Fezzik spoke, Inigo was positive that he was the only one who was genuinely scared to pieces, and the fact that they both were did not bode well if panic time came. Someone would have to keep his wits, and he had assumed automatically that since Fezzik had so few, he would find retaining them not at all that difficult. No good, Inigo realized. Well, he would simply have to do his best to avoid panic situations, and that was that. The staircase was straight and very long, but eventually they reached the end of it. Another door. Fezzik gave it a push. It opened. Another corridor lined with cages, big ones though, and inside great baying hippos and a 20-foot alligator thrashing angrily in shallow water. "We must hurry," Inigo said, picking up the pace, much as we might like to dawdle, and he half ran toward the sign that said, "To level 3. Inigo opened the door and looked down, and Fezzik peered over his shoulder. Inigo said. The staircase was different. It was not nearly as steep, and it curved halfway, so that whatever was near the bottom of it was quite out of sight as they stood at the top preparing to go down. There were strange candles burning high on the walls out of reach. The shadows they made were very long and very thin. "Well, I'm certainly glad I wasn't brought up here," Inigo said, trying for a joke. "Fear," Fezzik said the rhyme out before he could stop it. Inigo exploded. "Really? If you can't maintain control, I'm going to send you right back up, and you can just wait there all by yourself. Don't leave me. Don't make me leave you, please. To say beer. I don't know how the F got in there." "I'm really losing patience with you. Come along," Inigo said, and he started down the curving stairs, Fezzik following, and the door closed behind them. Two things happened. Number 1, the door quite clearly locked. Number 2, out went the candles on the high walls. "Don't be frightened," Inigo said. I'm not, Fezzik screamed right back, and then, above his heartbeat, he managed, "What are we going to do?" "Simple," said Inigo after a while. "Are you frightened too?" asked Fezzik in the darkness. "Not remotely," Inigo said with a great care. And before I meant to say easy. I don't know how that's got in there. Look, we can't go back, and we certainly don't want to stay here, so we just must keep on going as we were before these little things happened. Down is our direction, Fezzik, but I can tell you're a bit edgy about all this, so out of the goodness of my heart, I will let you walk down, not behind me and not in front of me, but right next to me on the same step, stride for stride. And you put an arm around my shoulder, because that will probably make you feel better, and I, so as not to make you feel foolish, will put an arm around your shoulder, and thus, safe, protected together, we will descend. Will you draw your sword with your free hand? I already have. Will you make a fist with yours? It's clenched. Then let's look on the bright side. We're having an adventure, Fezzik, and most people live and die without being as lucky as we are. They moved down one step, then another, then 2, then 3, as they got the hang of it. Why do you think they locked the door behind us? Fezzik asked as they moved. To add spice to our trip, I suppose, replied Fezzik. It was certainly one of his weaker answers, but the best he could come up with. Here's where the turn starts, said Fezzik, and they slowed, making the sharp turn without stumbling, continuing on down, and they took away the candles for the same reason. Spice. Most likely. Don't lead me quite so hard. Oh, they took away the candles for the same reason, Spice? Most likely. Don't squeeze me quite so hard. Don't you squeeze me quite so hard. But then they knew they were they were for it. There has been for many years a running battle among jungle zoologists as to just which of the giant snakes is the biggest. The anaconda men are forever trumpeting the Orinoco specimen that weighed well over 500 pounds, while the python people never fail to reply by pointing out that the African rock found outside Zambezi measured 34 feet 7 inches. The argument, of course, is silly because biggest is a vague word having no value whatever in arguments if one is serious. But any serious snake enthusiast would admit, whatever his schooling, that the Arabian Garstini, though shorter than the python and lighter than the anaconda, was quicker and more ravenous than either. And this specimen of Prince Humperdinck's was not only remarkable for its speed and agility, it was also kept in a permanent state just verging on the outskirts of starvation. So the first coil came like lightning as it dropped from above them and pinioned their hands to the fist and sword were useless. So the fist and sword pinioned their hands so the fist and sword were useless, and the second coil imprisoned their arms, and said, "Do something," Inigo cried. "I can't, I'm caught. You do something. Fight it, Fezzik. It's too strong for me. Golly, I can't read it. Nothing is too strong for you." The third coil was done now around the upper shoulders, and the fourth coil and the final coil involved the throat, and Inigo whispered in terror because he could hear the beast's breathing now, could actually feel its breath. "Fight it! I'm... Fezzik trembled with fear and whispered, "Forgive me, Inigo! Oh, Fezzik! What? I had such rhymes for you! What rhymes?" Silence. The fourth coil was finished. "Inigo, what rhymes?" Silence. Snake breath. "Inigo, I want to know the rhymes before I die, Inigo. I really want to know. Inigo, tell me the rhymes," Fezzik said, and by now he was very frustrated, and more than that, he was spectacularly angry, and one arm came clear of one coil, and that made it a bit less of a chore to fight free of the second coil, and that meant he could take the arm and bring it to the aid of the other arm. And now he was yelling it out, "You're not going anywhere until I know those rhymes!" And the sound of his own voice was really very impressive, deep and resonant. And who was this snake, anyway, getting up in the path of Fezzik when there were rhymes to learn? And by this time, not only were both arms free of the bottom three coils, but he was furious at the interruption, and his hands grabbed toward the snake breath. And he didn't know if snakes had necks or not, but whatever it was that you called the part that was under its mouth, that was the part that had been his great hands, and he gave it a smash against the wall, and the snake hissed and spit, but the fourth coil was looser, so Fezzik smashed it again, and a third time, and then he brought his hands back a bit for leverage, and he began to whip the beast against the walls like a native washerwoman beating a skirt against rocks. And when the snake was dead, Inigo said, "Actually, I had no specific rhymes in mind. I just had to do something to get you into action." Fezzik was panting terribly from his labors. "You lied to me, is what you're saying. My only friend in all my life turns out to be a liar." He started tromping down the stairs, Inigo stumbling after him. Fezzik reached the door at the bottom and threw it open and slammed it, with Inigo just managing to slip inside before the drawer crashed shut. It locked immediately. At the end of this corridor, the to level 4 sign was clearly visible, and Fezzik hurried toward it. Inigo pursued him, hurrying past the prisoners, the spitting cobras and gaboon vipers, and perhaps most quickly lethal of all, the lovely tropical stonefish from the ocean outside India. I'd like to see that fish chase them down on land. I apologize, Inigo said. One lie in all these years, that's not such a terrible average when you consider it saved our lives. There's such a thing as principle, was all Fezzik could answer, and he opened the door that led to the 4th level. My father made me promise never to lie, and not once in my life have I even been tempted. And he started down the stairs. Stop! Inigo said. At least examine where we're going. It was a straight staircase, but completely dark. The opening at the far end was invisible. It can't be as bad as where we've been, Fezzik snapped, and down he went. In a way, he was right. For Inigo, bats were never the ultimate nightmare. Oh, he was afraid of them, like everybody else, and he would run and scream if they came near. In his mind, though, the bad place was bat infested. But Fezzik was a Turkish boy, and people claim the fruit bat from Indonesia is the biggest in the world. Try telling that to a Turk sometime. Try telling that to anyone who has heard his mother scream, "Here come the king bats!" followed by the poisonous fluttering of wings. "Here come the king bats!" Fezzik screamed, and he was quite literally, as he stood halfway down the dark steps, paralyzed with fear, and behind him now, doing his best to fight the darkness, came Inigo, and he had never heard that tone before, not from Fezzik, and Inigo didn't want bats in his hair either, but it wasn't worth that kind of fright. So he started to say, "What's so terrible about king bats?" But what was all that he had time for before Fezzik cried, "Rabies! Rabies!" And that was all Inigo needed to know. And he yelled, "Down, Fezzik!" And Fezzik still couldn't move, so Inigo felt for him in the darkness as the fluttering grew louder, and with all his strength he slammed the giant on the shoulder, hollering, "Down!" And this time Fezzik went to his knees obediently, but that wasn't enough, not nearly, so Inigo slammed him again, crying, "Flat, flat, all the way down," until Fezzik lay on the black stairs, shaking, and Inigo knelt above him, the great 6-fingered sword flying into his hands. And this was it. This was a test to see how far down the 90 days of brandy had taken him. How much of the great Inigo Montoya remained. For yes, he had studied fencing, true. He had spent half his life and more learning the Agrippa attack and the Bonetti defense. And of course he had studied his Tybalt. But he had also one desperate time spent a summer with the only Scot who ever understood swords, the crippled Macpherson, and it was Macpherson who scoffed at everything Inigo knew. It was Macpherson who said, Thibault is fine if you fight in a ballroom, but what if you meet your enemy on terrain that is tilted and you are below him? And for a week Inigo studied all the moves from below, and then Macpherson put him on a hill in the upper position, and when the moves were mastered, Macpherson kept right on, for he was a cripple. His legs stopped at the knee, and so he had a special feel for adversity. And what if your enemy blinds you, Macpherson once said. He throws acid in your eyes, and now he drives in for the kill. What do you do? What do you do? Tell me that, Spaniard. Survive that, Spaniard. And now, waiting for the charge of the king bats, Inigo flung his mind back toward the Macpherson moves, and you had to depend on your ears. You found his heart from his sounds, and now as he waited above him, Inigo could feel the king bats massing, while below him, Below him, Fezzik trembled like a kitten in cold water. "Be still," Inigo commanded, and that was the last sound he made because he needed his cars. He needed his ears now. Sorry, that E looks like a C.
Car keys.
Yeah, no. And he tilted his head toward the flutter, the great sword firm in his right hand, the deadly point circling slowly in the air. Inigo had never seen a king bat, knew nothing of them, knew how fast were they, how did they come at you, at what angle, and how many made each charge. The flutter was dead above him now, 10 feet perhaps more, and could bats see in the night? Did they have that weapon too? "Come on," Inigo was about to say, but there was no need, because with a rush of wings he had expected, and a high, long shriek he had not, the first king bat swooped down at him. Inigo waited, and the flutter was off to the left, and that was wrong, because he knew where he was, and so did the beasts. So that meant they must have been preparing something for him. A cut, a sudden turn, and with all control left to his brain, he kept his sword just as it was, circling slowly, not following the sound until the fluttering stopped and the king's bat veered in silence toward Inigo's face. The six-fingered sword drove through the silence. The death sound of the king bat was close to human, only a bit higher pitched and shorter, and Inigo was only briefly interested, because now there was a double flutter. There were coming at him from two sides, and one right, one left, and Macpherson told him always move from strength to weakness. So Inigo stabbed first to the right, then drove left, and two more almost human sounds came and went. The sword was heavy now. 3 dead beasts changed the balance, and Inigo wanted to clear the weapon, but now another flutter, a single one, and no veering this time, straight and deadly for his face, and he ducked and was lucky, and the sword moved up and into the heart of the lethal thing, and now there were 4 skewered on the sword of legend. And Inigo knew he was not about to lose this fight, and from his throat came the words, "I am Inigo Montoya, and still the wizard, come for me." And when he heard 3 of them fluttering, he wished he had been just a bit more modest, but it was too late for that, so he needed surprise, and he took it, shifting position against the beasts, standing straight, taking their dives long before they expected it. And now there were 7 king bats, and his sword was completely out of balance, and that would have been a bad thing, a dangerous thing, except for one important aspect. There was silence now in the darkness. The fluttering was done. "Some giant you are," Inigo said, and he stepped over Fezzik and hurried down the rest of the darkened stairs. Fezzik got up and lumbered after him, saying, "Inigo, listen, I made a mistake before. You didn't lie to me. You tricked me, and farther always, and tricking was fine. So I'm not mad at you anymore. And that is what... And wait, I'm not mad at you anymore. And is that all right with you? It's all right with me." They turned the knob on the door at the bottom of the black stairs and stepped on to the 4th level. Inigo looked at him. "You mean you'll forgive me completely for saving your life, if I completely forgive you for saving mine? Your friend, my only one, or you're my friend, my only one." "Pathetic, that's what we are," Inigo said. "Athletic, that's very good," Inigo said. So Fezzik knew they were fine again. They started toward the sign that said, "To level 5, passing strange cages." "This is the worst yet," Inigo said, and then he jumped back, because behind a pale glass case A blood eagle was actually eating what looked like an arm, and on the other side there was a great black pool, and whatever was in it was dark and many-armed, and the water seemed to get sucked toward the center of the pool where the mouth of the thing was. "Hurry," Inigo said, and he found himself trembling at the thought of being dropped into the black pool. They opened the door and looked down toward the 5th level. Stunning. In the first place, the door they opened had no lock, so it could not trap them. And in the second place, the stairs were all brightly lit. And in the third place, the stairs were absolutely straight. And in the fourth place, it wasn't a long flight at all. And in the main place, there was nothing inside. It was bright and clean and totally, without the least doubt, empty. "I don't believe it for a minute," Inigo said, and, holding his sword at the ready, he took the first step down. "Stay by the door. The candles will go out any second." He took a second step down. The candle stayed bright. A third step. A fourth. There were only about a dozen steps in all, and he took 2 more, stopping in the middle. Each step was perhaps a foot in width, as he was 6 feet from Fezzik, 6 feet from the large, ornate, green-handled door that opened into the final level. "Fezzik?" From the upper door. "What?" "I'm frightened." "It looks all right, though." "No, it's supposed to. That's to fool us. Whatever we've gotten by before, this must be worse." "But there's nothing to see, Inigo." Inigo nodded. "That's why I'm so frightened." He took another step down toward the final ornate green-handled door. Another 4 steps to go. 4 feet to go. 48 inches from death. Inigo took another step. He was trembling now, almost out of control. "Why are you shaking?" Fezzik from the top. "Death is here. Death is here." He took another step down. 24 inches to dying. "Can I come join you now?" Inigo shook his head. "No point in your dying too. But it's empty." "No, death is here." Now he was out of control. "If I could see it, I could fight it." Fezzik didn't know what to do. Just a minute. Fezzik didn't know what to do. "I'm Inigo Montoya, the wizard. Come for me." He turned around and around, sword ready, studying the brightly lit staircase. "Now you're scaring me," Fezzik said, and he let the door close behind him and started down the stairs. Inigo started up after him, saying, "No." They met on the 6th step, 72 inches from death above. The green speckled recluse doesn't destroy as quickly as the stonefish. And many think the mamba brings more suffering, what with the ulcerating and all. But gram for gram, nothing in the universe comes close to the green speckled recluse. Among other spiders, compared with the green speckled recluse, the Black Widow was a rag doll. Prince Humperdinck's recluse lived behind the ornate green handle on the bottom door. She rarely moved unless the handle turned. Then she struck like lightning. On the 6th stair, Fezzik put his arm around Inigo's shoulder. "We'll go down together, step by step. There's nothing here, Inigo." To the 5th step. "There has to be." "Why?" "Because the prince is affixed, and Rugen is his twin in misery, and this is their masterpiece." They moved to the 4th step. "That's a wonderful thinking, Inigo," Fezzik said, loud and calmly, but inside he was starting to go to pieces, because here he was in this nice bright place, and his one friend in all the world was cracking from the strain. And if you were Fezzik and you hadn't much brain power and you found yourself 4 stories underground in a zoo of death looking for a man in black that you really didn't think was down there, and the only friend you had in all the world was going quickly mad, what did you do? 3 steps down. If you were Fezzik, you panicked. Because if Inigo went mad, that meant the leader of this whole expedition was you. And if you were Fezzik, you knew that the last thing in the world you could ever be was a leader. So Fezzik did what he always did in a panic situation. He bolted. He just yelled and jumped for the door and slammed it open with his body, never even bothering with the niceties of turning that pretty green handle. And as the door gave behind his strength, he kept right on running until he came to the giant cage, and there, inside and still, lay the man in black. Fezzik stooped then, relieved greatly, because seeing that silent body meant one thing. Inigo was right. And if Inigo was right, he couldn't be crazy and if he wasn't crazy, then Fezzik didn't have to lead anybody anywhere. And when that thought reached his brain, Fezzik smiled. Inigo, for his part, was startled at Fezzik's strange behavior. He saw no reason for it whatsoever, and was about to call after Fezzik when he saw a tiny green speckled spider scurrying down from the door handle, so he stepped on it with his hind paw. Sorry, I lost. He stepped on it with his boot. Where did I get hind paw?
I don't know. People don't have paws.
Yeah, I know. He saw a tiny green speckled spider scurrying down from the door handle, so he stepped on it with his boot as he hurried to the cage. Fezzik was already inside the place, kneeling over the body. Don't say it, Inigo said, entering. Fezzik tried not to, but it was on his face. Dead. Inigo examined the body. He had seen a lot of corpses in his time. Dead. Then he sat down miserably on the floor and put his arms around his knees and rocked back and forth like a baby, back and forth, and back. It was too unfair. You expected unfairness if you breathed, but this went beyond that. He, Inigo, no thinker, had thought, hadn't he found the man in black. He, Inigo, frightened of beasts and crawlers and anything that stung, had brought them down the zoo unharmed. He had said goodbye to caution and stretched himself far beyond any boundaries he had ever dreamed he possessed. And now, after such effort, after being reunited with Fezzik on this day of days, for this one purpose, to find the man to help him find a plan to help him revenge his dead Domingo, gone. All was gone. Hope gone. Future gone. All the driving forces of his life gone. Snuffed out. Beaten. Dead. I am Inigo Montoya, the son of Domingo Montoya, and I do not accept it. He sprang to his feet, started up the underground stairs, stopping only long enough to snap commands. Come, along! Bring the body! He searched through his pockets for a moment, but they were empty from the brandy. Have you got any money, Fezzik? Some. They pay well in the brute squad. Well, I just hope it's enough to buy a miracle, that's all. Alright, I am going to... Yeah, I'm tongue-tied today. No, I'm good, but what I think I'm going to do, let's see how long chapter 8 is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Alright, let me go one more section and then we'll...
You need one more page?
No, section. It's like 10 pages. Alright. Yay. All right. When the knocking started on his hut door, Max almost didn't answer it. Go away, he almost said, because lately it was only kids who came to mock him, except this was a little past the time for kids being up. It was almost midnight, and besides, the knocking was both loud and, at the same time, rat-a-tatty, as if the brain was saying to the fist, Hurry up! I want to see a little action. So Max opened the door a peek's worth. I don't know you! Aren't you the Miracle Max that worked all those years for the king? The skinny guy said. I got fired, didn't you hear? That's a painful subject. You shouldn't have brought it up. Good night. Next time, learn a little manners. And he closed the hut door. Rat-a-tat, rat-a-tat. Get away, I'm telling you, or I'm calling the brute squad. I'm on the brute squad. This other voice said from outside the door. A big, deep voice you wanted to stay friendly with. We need a miracle. It's very important, the skinny guy said from outside. I'm retired, Max said. Anyway, you wouldn't want someone the king got rid of, would you? I might kill whoever you want me to miracle. He's already dead, the skinny guy said. He is, huh? Max said, a little interest in his voice now. He opened the door a peek's worth again. I'm good as dead. Please, the skinny guy said. Bring him in. I'm making no promises, Miracle Max answered after some thought. This huge guy and this skinny guy brought in this big guy and put him on the hut floor. Max poked the corpse. Not so stiff as some, he said. The skinny guy said, We have money. Then go get some genius specialists, why don't you? Why waste time messing around with me, a guy who the king fired? It almost killed him when it happened. For the first 2 years he wished it had. His teeth fell out from gnashing. He pulled the few loyal tufts from his scalp in wild anger. You're the only miracle man left in all of Florin, the skinny guy said. Oh, so that's why you come to me, one of you said. What'll we do with this corpse? And the other said, Let's take a flyer on that miracle man the king fired. And the first one probably said, We've got to lose. What have we got to lose? He can't kill a corpse. And the other one probably said, You were a wonderful miracle man, the skinny guy said. It was all politics that got you fired. It was all politics that got you fired. Don't insult me and say wonderful. I was great. I am great. There was never, you hear me, sonny, a miracle man could match me. Half the miracle techniques I invented, and then they fired me. Suddenly his voice trailed off. He was very cold and weak, and the effort at passionate speech had drained him. Sir, please, sit down, the skinny guy said. Don't sir me, sonny, Miracle Max said. He was tough when he was young, and he was still tough. I got work to do. I was feeding my witch when you came in. I got to finish that now. And he lifted the hut trap door and took the ladder down into the cellar, locking the trap door behind him. When that was done, he put his finger to his lips and ran to the old woman cooking hot chocolate over the coals. Max had married Valerie back 1,000,000 years ago, it seemed like, at Miracle School. Are we good? Like, what is that? Where she worked as a potion ladler. She wasn't, of course, a witch, but when Max started practice, every miracle man had to have one. So, since Valerie didn't mind, he called her a witch in public, and she learned enough of the witch trade to pass herself off as one under pressure. Listen, Max whispered, gesturing repeatedly toward the hut above. Upstairs, you'll never guess what I got. A giant and a spick. A giant on a stick, Valerie said, clutching her heart. Her hearing wasn't what it once was. Spick, a Spanish fella. Scars and everything, a very tough cookie. Let them steal what they want. What do we have worth fighting over? They don't want to steal, they want to buy. Me! They got a corpse up there, and they want a miracle. You were always good at dead, Valerie said. She hadn't seen him trying so hard not to seem excited since the firing had all but done him in. She very carefully kept her own excitement under control. If only he would work again. Her Max was such a genius. They'd all come back, every patient. Max would be honored again, and they could move out of the hut. In the old days, the hut was where they tried experiments. Now it was home. You had nothing else pressing on for the evening. Why not take the case? I could, I admit it, no question, but suppose I did. You know human nature. They'd probably try getting out without paying. How can I force a giant to pay if he doesn't want to? Who needs that kind of grief? I'll send them on their way, and you bring me up a nice cup of chocolate. Besides, I was halfway through an article on eagle's claws that was very well written. Get the money in advance. Go demand. If they say no, out with them. If they say yes, bring the money down to me. I'll feed it to the frog, and they'll never find it, even if they change their mind and try to rob it back. Max started back up the ladder. What should I ask for? I haven't done a miracle. It's, 3 years now? Prices may have skyrocketed. 50, you think? If they got 50, I'll consider. If not, out they go. Right, Valerie agreed. And the minute Max had shut the trap door, she clambered silently up the ladder and pressed her ear to the ceiling. Sir, we're in terrible rush, so the one voice said. Don't you hurry me, Sonny. You hurry a miracle man, you get rotten miracles. That's what you want. You'll do it then? I didn't say I'd do it, Sonny. Just try pressuring a miracle man. Not this one. You try pressuring me, out you go. How much money you got? Give me your money, Fezzik, the same voice said again. Here's all I've got. The great voice boomed. You can count it, Inigo. Then there was a pause. 65 is what I've got, the one called Inigo said. Valerie was about to clap her hands with joy when Max said, I never worked for anything that little in all my life. You gotta be joking. Excuse me again. I gotta belch my witch. She's done eating by now. Valerie hurried back to the coals and waited until Max joined her. No good, he said. They only got 20. Valerie stirred away at the stove. She knew the truth, but dreaded having to say it, so she tried another trick. We're practically out of chocolate powder. 20 could sure be a help at the barterers tomorrow. No chocolate powder, Max said, visibly upset. Chocolate was one of his favorites, right after cookie drops. Maybe if it was a good cause, you could lower yourself to work for 20, Valerie said. Find out why they need the miracle. They probably lie. Use the bellows, Cram, if you're in doubt. Look, I would hate to have it on my conscience if we didn't do a miracle when nice people were involved. You're a pushy lady, Max said, but he went back upstairs. Okay, he said to the skinny guy. What's so special I should bring back out of all the hundreds of people pestering me every day for my miracles, this particular fella? And believe me, it better be worthwhile. Inigo was about to say, so he can tell me how to kill Count Rugen, but that didn't quite sound like the kind of thing that would strike a cranky miracle man as aiding the general betterment of mankind. So he said, he's got a wife, he's got 15 kids. They haven't a shred of food. If he stays dead, they'll starve. So, oh, Sonny, are you a liar? Max said, and he went to the corner and got out the huge bellows. I'll ask him. Max grunted, lifting the bellows toward Wesley. He's a corpse. He can't talk. Oh, we got our ways, was all Max would answer, and he stuck the huge bellows way down into Wesley's throat and started to pump. You see, Max explained as he pumped, there's different kinds of dead. There's sort of dead, mostly dead, and all dead. This fella here, he's only sort of dead, which means there's still a memory inside. There's still bits of brain. You apply a little pressure here, a little more there. Sometimes you get results. Wesley was beginning to swell lightly now from all the pumping. "What are you doing?" Fezzik said, starting to get upset. "Never mind. I'm just filling his lungs. I guarantee you it isn't hurting him." He stopped pumping the bellows after a few moments more, and then started shouting into Wesley's ear. "What's so important? What's here worth coming back for? What you got waiting for you?" Max carried the bellows back to the corner then and got out a pen and paper. "It takes a while for that to work its way out, so you might as well answer me some questions. How well do you know this guy?" Inigo didn't much want to answer that, since it might have sounded strange admitting they'd only just met him once alive, and then to duel to the death. "How do you mean exactly?" he replied. "Well, for example," Max said, "was he ticklish or not?" "Ticklish?" Inigo exploded angry. "Ticklish? Life and death and all around, and you talk ticklish? Don't you yell at me," Max exploded right back, "and don't you mock my methods. Tickling can be terrific in the proper instances. I had a corpse once, worse than this fella, mostly dead he was, and I tickled him and tickled him. I tickled his toes and I tickled his armpits and his ribs, and I got a peacock feather and went after his belly button. I worked all day and I worked all night, and the following dawn, mark me, this corpse said, 'I just hate that.' And I said, 'Hate what?' And he said, 'Being tickled. I've come all the way back from the dead to ask you to stop.' And I said, 'You mean this that I'm doing now with the peacock feather bothers you?' And he said, 'You couldn't guess how much it bothers me.' And of course I just kept on asking him questions about tickling, making him talk back to me, answer me, because I don't have to tell you, once you get a corpse really caught up in a conversation, your battle's half over." "True love." Fezzik grabbed onto Inigo in panic, and they both pivoted, staring at the man in black, who was silent again. "True love," he said. Inigo cried. "You heard him. True love is what he wants to come back for." "That's certainly worthwhile. Sonny, don't you tell me what's worthwhile. True love is the best thing in the world, except for cough drops. Everybody knows that." "Then you'll save him." "Yes, absolutely, I would save him if he had said true love. But you misheard, whereas I, being an expert on the bellows cram, will tell you what any qualified tongue man will only be happy to verify, namely, that the F sound is the hardest for the corpse to master, and that it therefore comes out v, and what your friend said was to blov, which means, he meant, obviously, to bluff. Clearly, he's either involved in a shady business deal or a card game and wishes to win, and that is certainly not a reason enough for a miracle. I'm sorry, I never change my mind once it's made up. Goodbye, take your corpse with you." "Liar! Liar!" shrieked suddenly from the now open trap door. Miracle Max whirled. "Back, my witch!" he commanded. "I'm not a witch, I'm your wife!" She was advancing on him now, an ancient tiny fury. "And after what you've just done, I don't think I want to be that any more." Miracle Max tried to calm her, but she was having none of it. "He said true love, Max. Even I could hear it. True love, true love." "Don't go on," Max said, and now there was pleading coming from somewhere. Valerie turned toward Inigo. "He is rejecting you because he is afraid. He is afraid he has done that the miracles are gone from his once majestic fingers." "Not true," Max said. "You're right," Valerie agreed. "It isn't true. They never were majestic, Max. You were never any good. The ticklish cure. You were there. You saw a fluke. All the drowners I returned. Chance. Valerie, we've been married 80 years. How can you do this to me? Because true love is escaping, and you haven't got the decency to tell why you don't help. Well, I do, and I say this. Prince Humperdinck was right to fire you. Don't say that name in my hut, Valerie. You made a pledge to me. You would never breathe that name. Prince Humperdinck, Prince Humperdinck, Prince Humperdinck. At least he knows a phony when he sees one. Max fled toward the trapdoor, his hands going to his ears. But this is his fiancée's true love, Inigo said then. If you bring him back to life, he will stop Prince Humperdinck's marriage. Max's hands left his ears. This corpse here, he comes back to life, Prince Humperdinck suffers? Humiliations galore, Inigo said. Now that's what I call a worthwhile reason, Miracle Max said. Give me the 65, I'm on the case. He knelt beside Wesley. He said. What? Valerie said. She knew that tone. While you were doing all that talking, he slipped them sort of to mostly dead. Valerie tapped Wesley in a couple of places. Stiffening, she said. You'll have to work around that. Max did a few taps himself. Do you suppose the oracle's still up? Valerie looked at the clock. I don't think so. It's almost 1. Besides, I don't trust her at all that much anymore. Max nodded. I know, but it would have been nice to have a little advance hint on whether this is going to work or not. He rubbed his eyes. I'm tired going in. I wish I'd known in advance about the job. I'd have napped this afternoon. He shrugged. Can't be helped. Down is down. Get me my encyclopedia of spells and the hex appendix. I thought you knew all about this kind of thing, Inigo said, starting to get upset himself now. I'm out of practice, retired. It's been 3 years. You can't mess around with these resurrection recipes. One little ingredient wrong, the whole thing blows up in your face. Here's the hex book and your glasses, Valerie puffed, coming up the basement ladder, and Max began thumbing through. She turned to Inigo and Fezzik, who were hovering. You can help, she said. Anything, Fezzik said. Tell us whatever's useful. How long do we have for the miracle if we work it? When we work it, Max said from his hex book. His voice was growing stronger. When we work it, Valerie went on. How long does it have to maintain full efficiency? Just exactly what's going to be done. Well, that's hard to predict, Inigo said, since the first thing we have to do is storm the castle, and you never can be really sure how these things work out. An hour pill should be an hour, right? An hour pill should be about right, Valerie said. Either it's going to be plenty or you'll both be dead. So why not say an hour? We'll all three be fighting, Inigo corrected. And then, once we've stormed the castle, we have to stop the wedding, steal the princess, and make our escape, allowing space somewhere in there for me to duel Count Rugen. Visibly, Valerie's energy drained. She sat wearily down. Max, she said, tapping his shoulder. No good. He looked up. Huh? They need a fighting corpse. Max shut the hex book. No good? He said. But I bought a miracle, Inigo insisted. I paid you 65. Look here, Valerie thumped Wesley's chest. Nothing. You could hear anything so hollow. The man's life been sucked away. It'll take months before there's strength again. We haven't got months. It's after all 1 day now, and the wedding's at 6 tonight. What parts can we hope to have in working order in 17 hours? Well, Max said, considering, certainly the tongue, absolutely the brain, and with luck maybe a little slow walk if you nudge him gently in the right direction. Inigo looked at Fezzik in despair. What else can I do? Max said. You needed a phasmagonist, and you never could have gotten one of those for 65, Valerie added consolingly. Okay, that is where I'm going to stop for today. I am sorry that I'm stumbling over the words, but we are...
It's hard to stop once you start.
It is hard to stop once you start, and I apologize again for happy early birthday, Jenny. I'll catch the video later tonight. Okay, so I hope that you're enjoying the story anyway. Again, I'm sorry for my I'm struggling tonight. So all right, God bless you. Have a good night, and
Show us where we are in the book.
we're here, but we're here, but we only have to get to
We only.
well, this is the end
Because it has Buttercup's
because
baby
it
in it too.
has another story in it too, which is that long. So
Buttercup's baby.
Buttercup's baby, and maybe we'll read that at a later date.
Aww.
Oh.
Please stop. We have
All right.
7 days.
So good night, and we will see you tomorrow or sometime. All right. God bless. Bye.